Hey guys, I'm Melissa. I am a registered dietitian and welcome to my channel. Today we are talking about something that a lot of people have a very strong opinion about, and that is the documentary What the Health. So if you haven't seen it, What the Health is a documentary that is on Netflix. And yeah, like I said, a lot of people have very strong opinions about it. So hopefully I can give you a nice, well-balanced review of the movie, point out some good things and maybe some more questionable things about the movie as well. So first things first, this is a documentary about health, but really it's about a vegan diet. Anyone who is saying it's not about a vegan diet, I'm not sure what movie they're watching, but it's basically about all the dangers of meat and how meat is the source of all of these health problems that we have as a country. Kind of how they start is talking about how processed meats have been classified as a class 1 carcinogen, which is the same as cigarettes and asbestos, and there's one other thing I think that he mentions. And I'll start by just saying, just because it's a class 1 carcinogen doesn't mean that it is like the most cancer causing thing you could ever consume. It just means that there's a lot of evidence that it is linked to cancer. It doesn't mean it's a higher risk of cancer or as much of a risk of cancer as smoking cigarettes. Also, the risk of consuming processed meats is not as high as he makes it out to be in the movie. The risk is a very specific number, and it's, if you're consuming a certain amount of processed meats every single day, it raises your risk of colorectal cancer by, I believe it's 18%. But it raises that risk by 18% of the risk that you already have. So if you have a family history of colorectal cancer and you have a 20% risk of getting colorectal cancer already, eating that amount of processed meat every single day raises that 20% by 18%, making your risk 23.6%, not 38%. Hopefully that makes sense. I know that the numbers can be really confusing, and honestly, that's why people get away with kind of fear-mongering, because a lot of people don't really know how the numbers work. So hopefully that clarifies that a little bit. Now, let's talk about some of the good points that the filmmaker made in this documentary. So first, I really did like the overarching theme of the documentary, which was the fact that food can be medicine. Just because you're genetically predisposed to something doesn't mean that you're just gonna get it. If you change your lifestyle and if you change your diet, you can lower your risk factors of getting those things. And by changing your diet, you can cure diseases. He also talked a lot about how we should be preventing disease rather than curing disease, which I totally agree with. We really don't put enough emphasis on preventative care in this country, and we just kind of wait until the bad stuff happens and then try to fix it, rather than all consuming a healthy diet and exercising in the first place in order to try to not get those chronic diseases to begin with. I also liked at one point in the movie they talked about how doctors really don't know much about nutrition, and going to your doctor, you're probably not going to hear much about changing your diet. They're most likely just going to put you on a medication which doesn't actually solve the problem. It just helps the symptoms of the problem, and you're always going to have that issue and be taking that medication. It's the same with, these big pharmacy companies, they want you to be on medication because you're going to be paying for that medication for your entire life, rather than preventing those problems so that you never have to pay for that medication. I did think it was interesting though how they made a point to say that a lot of doctors don't know anything or much about nutrition, but they only had one dietitian in the entire movie and everyone else was MDs. But another point that I really appreciated was the section of the movie when they talked about advertising, and this is something that makes me so mad every time I watch TV or listen to the radio, when you hear all these advertisements for Arby's and McDonald's triple bacon cheese fried onion ring burger or something like that. the fact that those are being promoted to people constantly, and also the fact that the government is paying for most of those ads, is really frustrating. It's pretty shocking. It makes me so mad every time there's like a commercial somewhere that like makes fun of salad, and those types of incredibly unhealthy things are being promoted to us on a daily basis, multiple times a day, everywhere you look. The same is true when they talk about advertising to children. And I mean, this is something most dietitians have talked about in a class, you know, food companies advertise to kids. It goes as far as to like, if you go to the grocery store and look at the shelves that are eye level to children, it's all the bright, fun packaging, but the sugary processed cereals and snacks and everything like that. And so he just kind of talks about how, again, that stuff is being paid for a lot of times by the government, and promoting that stuff to children so that when they consume it as a child, they're probably going to consume it their entire life. Also, he talks about these processed meats like hot dogs and like chicken tenders and stuff like that are proven to be unhealthy for us and harmful to us, but they're being served in schools as school lunches. And I agree with him, that is upsetting and there needs to be a change, but I think it's a much more complicated issue than he made it out to be. So let's talk about some of the, I won't say bad, I'll just say the more questionable points that he makes. The first is some of the science and the statistics that he uses. At one point he says that eating 1 egg is equivalent to smoking 5 cigarettes. I'm not sure where he got that information. And there's a lot of points he makes where he doesn't say where he got that information or explain what the science means. Like I said with the other statistics about, you know, the risks that eating processed meat brings, he never explains that. He just kind of throws the statistic out there in a dramatic way to make it sound really scary, and then doesn't explain it. So then you have no choice but to just believe it. One of the parts that bothered me was when he went and interviewed the guy from the American Diabetes Association. So he went in and interviewed like this high up guy at the American Diabetes Association, and they were having a good conversation, and then he started talking about how he found one study that a vegan diet is better at reversing diabetes than the American Diabetes Association's diet. And he just kind of continued to ambush the guy really for a little bit, and it ends up making the ADA guy, look really bad, because he's not interested in talking to him about that, because he's just kind of ambushing him with these questions. And at one point the ADA guy does say, you know, you might have found one study that's like that, but that does not mean that there's substantial evidence to back that up. The ADA is never gonna tell every single person with diabetes to go vegan, because that is such a dramatic change. And also, like he said, there's not substantial science. You can find one study that probably proves just about everything. So did he find 1 or 2 studies that a vegan diet reverses diabetes? Yeah, probably, but the ADA's diet and the American Heart Association's diet are backed up by hundreds of studies. I also think that he points out that on a lot of websites like the American Diabetes Association, American Heart Association, Cancer Association, that they have recipes with food that is proven to be harmful. And I do think that that is kind of an interesting point, but I also think that you have to look at it on a bigger scale. So everyone that gets diagnosed with diabetes, like I said, is not going to go vegan. A lot of people that get diagnosed with diabetes might have an extremely unhealthy lifestyle, and just because there's recipes with beef on the website of the American Diabetes Association doesn't mean that the American Diabetes Association is ignoring research. It means they're trying to provide things in moderation to people looking for resources. They're trying to provide healthier alternatives or ways to modify what you might already cook to make it healthier. Not everyone that gets diagnosed with a disease like that is ready to completely change their life. Some people just want to make small changes, and that's okay, and that's what those recipes are for. He also makes quite a large point about sponsors, which I totally agree with. I think we need to, I mean, you definitely always need to question every study that you read, every piece of information that you read as to who sponsored that research, because that is going to sway the outcome, unfortunately. But the fact of the matter is, these huge organizations like the American Diabetes Association, American Heart Association, they're huge companies that need money, and they're gonna take money from other huge companies. Coke and Monsanto are at Fancy every single year. That doesn't mean that dietitians are recommending Coke. Like, I don't know. I think you just have to kind of take all of that with a grain of salt. These companies are always going to have large company sponsors. That's how research gets done. I mean, they wouldn't be able to do these big studies if it wasn't for that. And yes, I mean, we should question that, like I said, but also, why should we not trust the American Heart Association, but we should trust this guy making a documentary on Netflix? Just saying. There's also quite a bit of fear mongering in the movie, I think. There's also a section of the movie when they talk about these toxins that are in beef and how the only way that they can escape the body is through placenta and through breast milk. So I just feel like it's trying to scare moms, make the moms think that they're like killing their children by eating beef. And they don't talk about how much beef you have to eat to get those toxins. If a mother is eating a hamburger once a week, once every couple weeks, she's not harming her child. She's not eating a cow every single day and having all these toxins build up in her body and then releasing them to her child when she breastfeeds them. It's just stuff like that that's just like, yeah. Another thing that they talked about that kind of bothered me as a dietitian is they talked about the food pyramid and my plate and everything, and specifically about dairy and how, you know, so many people are lactose intolerant, and yet dietitians and the USDA are pushing dairy, something that knowingly harms us, on people. And as a dietitian, and I think most dietitians will agree with me, I have never told someone who is lactose intolerant that they have to drink dairy to have a healthy diet. That just doesn't happen. The final thing I want to question, I guess, is the 3 people that he talked to throughout the movie, who were like very sick people, and they supposedly ate a vegan diet for 2 weeks and went completely off all their medications. Which is great if that actually happened, that's awesome. But I would like to see him check in with those people a year from now and see what is happening in their lives, because honestly, I think that if those same people would have followed pretty much any healthy diet that a dietitian recommended, I think that they would have improved as well. In conclusion, I thought that there was some really good points. I thought there was some questionable points. There's a lot of points that he made that were lacking in science to back them up. Especially the more dramatic, scary points were lacking evidence to actually back them up. I think overall, documentaries like this one, they all push these incredibly dramatic changes, and I just wish there would be some like popular celebrity-backed health documentary about like living a balanced life and eating things in moderation. That would be great. I hope you liked this review. Let me know what you thought of the movie down below. And yeah, let me know if there's any other health documentaries or books or anything that you would like me to review on my channel. And I think that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.